Welcome to Menopause Moguls podcast, the Elevation Talk series, with yours truly, Dr. Joyelle. I am Dr. Joyelle, the Menopause Mogul, board certified OBGYN and business coach for Black women 40 and over. And my mission is to educate, embolden, and empower Black women and other women of color in their journey through health and careers. This is a space for Black women and other women of color to share their compelling trials and tribulations in their health and or in their careers and businesses. This is where we recognize the humanity of Black women and show how Black women continue to elevate despite midlife challenges and changes. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Menopause Moguls with yours truly, Dr. Joyelle. Hey y'all, how y'all doing? I just finished a workout and just thinking about my reasons of why I exercise has changed over the years. And this episode, I wanted to talk about beauty and brains, mostly the brains, because June is a brain awareness month, brain health, brain awareness month. And I wanted to talk about it because also what inspired this episode is that I'm reading this book, The Menopause Brain by Dr. Lisa Mosconi, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But yeah, going back to exercising and my motivation to exercise have definitely changed from my younger years to my now midlife years, right? So thinking back, I typically was someone who would exercise pretty regularly when I was younger. And it was more so just to keep it tight, right? Keep the belly tight, keep the legs, the arms, and beauty, right? Beauty over brains. So as I've gotten older, I've had to change my reasons why I exercise because of all the things that our body goes through as we're aging. We really have to look beyond the beauty part or the outside of the benefits of exercise and tune in or tap in more into the inside of how exercise can benefit us. And most importantly, our brain health, right? And obviously it also helps with a lot of other things, our heart health, our bone health, our mental health. But I wanted to talk about like our physical brain health and how exercise is really important to the health of our brains. And I was reading some studies and reading some articles, and it talked about how a large amount of women over 40 and over, are the most inconsistent when it comes to their exercise. And it also talked about how a lot of midlife women, they get so caught up in life, right? And they were doing all the things. And a lot of us, when we're exercising regularly, exercise is the first thing to go when we, get so busy, we stop exercising. And which is pretty sad, right? Because exercise is so important in the health of our brains and our whole bodies. And for that to be something that we're inconsistent with, or, definitely the first thing to go in the long run, it's not healthy, right? We're now compromising our heart health, our brain health, our bone health, our mental, we're compromising everything because our brain is, as we all know, the major control center of all the body systems, all of the nerves, the cells, everything. Our ovaries, our ovarian health, everything depends on our brain. And as we are going into these midlife years and entering the menopausal transition and menopause and beyond, I loved how this book, The Menopause Brain, talked about how the society or Western medicine gets us to focus more on the ovaries and, oh, how your ovaries, they're declining when, in regards to losing its ability to release estrogen, they're shriveling up, and it's your ovaries, it's your ovaries, it's your ovaries. And in fact, it really is also our brains that come into play when we are aging, when we are entering perimenopause and menopause, and the impact that has as we are entering this stage of life. And we really, because of that, we really have to be intentional about taking care of our brains as we're going through this stage, because our brain is so full of the receptors, the estrogen receptors. And as our estrogen is decreasing or declining as we're entering menopause and beyond, now those receptors, they're losing their fuel, and that subsequently means that now we're losing abilities to do certain things, right? Like, so when there's some women who can have neurological symptoms or cognitive symptoms when they are going into perimenopause and menopause, like dizziness, headaches, brain fog, memory loss, inability to understand things, and um, and that is, like, typically due to the decline in estrogen, and that obviously shows how our brain plays a big part when we are experiencing um, perimenopause and beyond, and again, we talk about when we in medical offices and just in general, we talk a lot about their ovaries and how they're shriveling up and all these things, but we really have to pay closer attention to what is happening in our brains. And in this book, it talked about the whole the neuroendocrine system, right? It's a whole ecosystem, the connection between the brain and the ovaries and all the other um, body systems. And that goes back to, I've talked about this before, the ecosystem within our bodies, right? Like everything, all of these systems are connected. So a lot of times we get caught up in, oh, we're having a hot flash, oh, we're having some joint pain, and like these things are just separate things, but all of these things are connected. And a lot of times when we potentially address one thing, it potentially can improve some other things that we may be experiencing in menopause. So it's important to realize that connection, that neuroendocrine connection, and also the brain estrogen network that's happening. Again, there's so many receptors in our brains for estrogen, and for our bodies to actually then now lose this fuel of of our what we call is our estrogen, that changes things. And I, like I said, I'm reading this book because I'm always, I'm a lifelong learner, definitely more intentional about just learning more things and bringing it back to y'all, because y'all need to know this information too. um, so Dr. Mosconi, she's a world-renowned neuroscientist who does a lot of her research, all of her research, in looking at the brains of women, and especially perimenopausal, menopause, and menopausal and beyond, looking at their brains and see how our brains change as we age, and also as we are entering this phase of life. And she talks about how our brain energy changes as we are going through perimenopause, menopause, and beyond. And that energy actually declines in perimenopause, and that impacts our body temperature, our mood, our sleep. And that all makes sense, right? Because there's a lot of these symptoms that we're having in perimenopause and beyond. These symptoms stem from changes that are happening in different regions of our brains. There's different regions of our brains that are in charge of our mood, that are in charge of our body temperature, that are in charge of our sleep. So if we are more aware of that connection, and more intentional about not only taking care of our body on the outside, but also our brain and different body systems within us that people don't see. So I thought it was very interesting how she talked about, and she has pictures in the book too, how the brain energy changes and actually declines in perimenopause. Um, and it's not just our brain energy that changes. That also the structure, the connectivity of the nerve cells, the neurons within our brains, the chemistry, all of that is changing as we are entering perimenopause, menopause, and beyond. But this is what she also beautifully talked about in the book. This is not the first time our brain is doing this. She talked about the three P's: puberty, pregnancy, and perimenopause, and how they're all very similar when it comes to the changes that are happening in our brains during these different phases of life. But it's interesting how, when we talk about puberty and pregnancy, it's all like, oh, this is a stage of life, it's necessary, things that we have to go through. In pregnancy, we get this lovely gift of a baby at the end of it all. We go through these, different changes. But when it comes to perimenopause, it's all doom and gloom. It's like, oh my gosh, like, why do I have to go through this? Can we prevent it? Can we avoid it? Like all the things. But this is just another stage, another transition that we have to go through. If you someone who has ovaries, that's what we have to go. One of the transitions that we have to go through, just like puberty, just like pregnancy, and now perimenopause. And she talked about how all of these transitions are marked by the vulnerability and the resiliency of our brains, of our bodies at the same time. And I am so intentional in regards to just looking at the vulnerability and being more vulnerable as I am, continue to go through these changes. I'm still perimenopausal. So I'm still going through, still experiencing some things, but definitely not on the level that I did when I first started in my early 40s. So this vulnerability and resiliency, she talked about the growth of our brains, and then at the same time also pruning, right? Actually losing different things and some things being restored as we are going through these different stages of life. And she talked about women's brains age differently than men, and these statistics that she mentioned in the book was also quite striking. But I kind of knew most of them, but just to share with you, she talked about how women, when she said that women's brains age differently than men, women are twice as likely as men to be diagnosed with anxiety or depression, twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's disease, 3 times more likely to develop an autoimmune disorder like multiple sclerosis, 4 times more likely to suffer from headaches and migraines, more likely to develop brain tumors, and more likely to be killed by a stroke. Like, really? Right? And being a Black woman, a lot of those numbers increase even more. So again, that goes back to how we really need to be aware of the function of our brains and the impact that it has, not only on just our, brain health in general, but our overall health and our overall wellness. And she mentioned the changes where we have these billions of nerve cells that we are born with, and there's new connections happening. They're developing, every second. And as we are growing, as a baby, our brain doubles in volume, it reaches a peak, and then the density begins to decrease a little bit. And then as the brain starts to respond to different life experiences, different processes are, developed. There are different neurons, different connections that are being developed and refined. And at the same time, there's also pruning going on. So as we're aging, as we're getting older from a baby, those connections, there's some connections that are strengthening. There's some connections that are now being thrown away because, just think about when we are growing and learning new things as a kid, now that, we've kind of been able to do things automatically, like tie a shoe and ride a bike, we don't need those neurons anymore. We don't need those connections anymore. So we can get rid of those. So the brain gets rid of those and discards those neurons and make room for other neurons and connections to be present. And she mentioned in the book by age 6 or 7, that process of growth and elimination, it occurs as we're reading and we're learning again to socialize, things like that. And at this point, our brain reaches 90% of its full size at that age. And not to say that our brain, it reaches that size, but it's still maturing. It's still making more connections and more, chemical reactions and things like that are still happening as we're maturing. It's not growing in size anymore, but as we continue to get, older after those elementary years, there's still maturing that is going on. And then she went on to talk about how our brain changes when we get to puberty. And the brain actually shrinks when we get to puberty. And meaning that half of the neurons are shed because we don't need them anymore. And they're making room for more neurons and more connections that we need as we are now getting into these pubertal years. And then there's a shift in brain size, activity, and connectivity. And when we're getting to have our menstrual cycles, those shifts happening every month. With those cycles, there's always something, growing, discarding, pruning in our brains that are happening with our menstrual cycles. And then that process again happens in pregnancy. Now we have this baby that is now growing inside of us. We're growing on the outside, but our brain actually is now pruning more things to make more room to develop connections that we need to become a mom and tend to this new bundle of joy that we have in our arms, just creating new connections to take care of that little baby at the same time. And that growth and pruning process is happening all over again in perimenopause. So it's not a new thing, right? And we talk about the hormonal changes that spark development. Even she talked about how hormonal changes actually spark new development of different skills and things in perimenopause, which a lot of people don't talk about, right? They talk about, you're going to lose this, you're going to lose that, you're going to feel like you're crazy, you're going to have brain fog. But she talked about how there's after that decline in that cognitive skills, there's a potential for a lot of women. The research has shown a lot of women actually has a boost after that. There's improvement after that. So it doesn't last forever. It is a temporary thing, which is reassuring, right? She doesn't go into, the timing of that. And I think a lot of people, we get caught in like, okay, well, so when is that going to happen? When is that boost of memory or boost of concentration going to happen? It varies from person to person. And the timing also varies, but being aware that it will happen, I think is important for our mental health, right? For us to, not feel like this is going to be a forever thing and will never be the same in all the things. So I think we have to think about, those different connections and that different process that our brain goes every single time we, like I said, in puberty, now with our menstrual cycles, with pregnancy, and now with perimenopause. And that pruning process really stood out to me because I had talked about in previous episodes, I had an episode called The Growing Season, Part 1 and Part 2, and then also the Pushing Season episode where I talked about, pushing through fear and self-doubt, and how we have to be able to do that to push our business ideas out into the world. But all of that, in the same time, growing and pushing, in between that, there's a pruning process. And that pruning process can look different for everybody, but it really speaks to letting go of different beliefs that you may have, whether it's about yourself, whether about certain things that you do. Case in point, I talked about how I believed exercise in my younger years was just for me to look look slim and trim, right? But as I've gotten older, as I've gotten these midlife years, exercise is much more than that. And being consistent with exercise means a lot more to me than it did when I was younger, when I was, focusing more on the beauty, the outside part, as opposed to the inside part, which has been definitely more impactful when it comes to my brain health, my heart health, my bone health. So I've been more intentional. And because of that, I'm more consistent with it, right? And that, let me just tell you, that's something but that's not been easy, right? Like I definitely have had periods, especially having temporary long COVID, where I was not able to exercise. So I had periods was, I didn't really have the energy, the motivation, and physically I couldn't do it. So it took me a minute to actually get back into exercise again, moving my body. But again, I had to take my mind to the fact that, yes, I can't do it now, but I will get back to it and think about the reasons why I need to do it. Like I said, the brain health, the heart health, and not just to lose this gut that I got. This menopause muffin top that I have, this fupa that I have, not just for that, even though it's still for that now, y'all. Let's make it clear. Like I'm still trying to work on that, but it's much more than that, much more impactful, and more reason for me to actually be more consistent. But the pruning process when we are getting to these midlife years, it's so important. Going back to the mindset of how we look at our bodies, how we look at ourselves when we're going through perimenopause, menopause, and beyond, and letting go of different belief systems is so important for us to be able to do the things that we want to do, like build a business, do the things that we want to do, like pivot in our careers, or do whatever that big thing is that you want to do. We really have to be intentional about letting go of different belief systems and letting go of negative self-talk, letting go of perfectionism, which was a big thing for me. Letting go of that made so much room for me to actually take the steps I need to take to build my business and do the things that I've wanted to do as I'm getting up in these late 40s of my life. And, just thinking about even one of my clients, there's a step in my program, my Menopause Moguls coaching program, and that step is called unloading or unload. And that has been, for all of my clients, the most transformational step in my process, in my Menopause Moguls process, because watching them unload certain things, whether it is a task, whether it is a thought, whether it is a person, it has been so transformational for them. One of my clients who, again, a mom, she was practicing in a behavioral health practice and, doing all the things, and didn't really see herself building a business or, being a CEO of a business. But once she started unloading things, once she started unloading the the negative thoughts that she had about herself, once she started unloading the negative thoughts that was connected to the menopausal symptoms that she was having, the brain fog, the hot flashes. She had negative thoughts connected to those things, which was essentially, and also, brain fog, which was essentially keeping her stuck in the, oh, I don't see myself doing that. As far as building a business, I don't see myself being a boss. I don't see myself. Once she started unloading those thoughts, once she started unloading again how she viewed herself, it really made a shift, and she the clouds opened up for her. She described it as such, where she was able to now see herself as someone who can certainly build her own business and go out on her own and do the things that she want to do. Once she started unloading things she was doing for the kids, like fixing their lunches, and then she made them start doing it. That gave her a phenomenal shift in, in running her household. Like, she was unloading these things that she certainly can now assign other people to do. And that made room for her to have a vision of it, for her to actually envision herself building a business, building her own practice, and thriving in that. And at the same time, her symptoms are lifting. She's no longer having brain fog. She no longer having hot flashes. All of that. That was making room for her to do the things that she needed to do to go after her dreams of now building her own practice. And that is what she did. That is what she did. So just thinking about the idea of needing to let go of things. And I know that is hard. That was not easy for her. It definitely wasn't easy for me. It's not easy for any of us to let go of a certain routine, to let go of certain thoughts and ideas of ourselves, because it's something that we have to unlearn a lot of things sometimes, right? And that's a process. That's definitely a process, but it's doable. It is doable and is necessary. It is definitely necessary. And just going back to, like I said, just going back to just even the simple idea of why I exercise, that has certainly, shifting my mindset around why I need to exercise has certainly been able to get me back into being more consistent. And then ultimately, again, helping my brain health for me to do things, things that I want to do, which reminds me, I have an announcement at the end. So, you've been here all this time. Got to say that in the beginning, but stay tuned to the end. I wanted to share with you something that I've been working on. But yeah, just the importance of our brain health and navigating a menopause brain to build a business, to do something big and scary like build a business. It's important that we are intentional about taking care of our brains and boosting our brains. And just what that looks like definitely goes back to, what we eat. Eating more plants makes a difference. Exercise, like I said in the beginning, and I would say over and over again, moving our bodies is so pivotal in this whole transition when we are going from, our reproductive years to now our non-reproductive years and perimenopause and menopause. Moving our bodies is transformational, y'all. And I like I said, I know it can be hard and difficult, and I don't want to put numbers on like you got to do, 150 minutes, a week. And yeah, we'll get to that. I just want you to know that any type of movement, any amount of minutes, it matters and it makes a difference. So I would, definitely encourage you to make that a part of your routine, so that you can get the benefits, not only from the outside, but definitely from the inside. And the other thing is eliminating toxins, and not just, the negative self-talk, but even like physical toxins that are in our foods, that are in our body care products. I'm going to do a whole episode on this. They're called xenoestrogens, which essentially are chemicals and toxins that are in our food and plastics and things like that, that actually gives our estrogen receptors mixed messages that makes our hormonal balance all off, looking crazy, basically. So being intentional about eliminating or minimizing those things also makes a difference. But that again goes back to the pruning process, the ability to actually get rid of discard things that no longer serve us, or that basically can impede or make us feel stuck in the struggle of the menopausal symptoms, and the struggle of self-doubt, and the struggle of trying to be perfect. We can like our brains do, create that environment where it's okay for us to let go of certain things. Our brains, as I mentioned in the beginning, as mentioned in this book, The Menopause Brain, our brains do it all the time, discarding all kinds of neurons that we just don't need anymore. And some of those things are in our life, connected to our life, we just don't need anymore. That may be a person, that may be a job, but a lot of it can be just thoughts that we have about ourselves and the stories that we tell about ourselves that can keep us stuck in the struggle, that can keep us stuck in self-doubt and in overwhelm. So going with that, that is a lot. um that is why I created that portion in my Menopause Moguls coaching program, the step of unloading. 'Cause like I said before, has been so transformational for my clients. The ability to let go of things that no longer serve you makes a world of a difference as you're trying to navigate this menopausal transition and midlife changes, and do big and scary things like build a business. So the announcement is I'm working on tweaking my Menopause Moguls group coaching program, and not only focusing more on the unloading part or a process of um, this journey, but also the wellness part, right? Like not just focusing on the physical and even mental health, but just overall wellness. And when I say wellness, more actively participating in feeling well in different dimensions of our wellness. And those different dimensions, there's 8 dimensions actually, which I'll, definitely do more episodes about. But those dimensions are physical, emotional, intellectual, environmental, spiritual, social, occupational, and financial, and how all of those impact how we show up personally and professionally, right? So I'm incorporating that now in my Menopause Moguls program, and I'm pretty excited about that. So I wanted to share that with y'all, and let you all know that if you are someone who is, I've mentioned before, my program is super serves Black women 40 and over, high achieving Black women 40 and over. But I'm particularly interested in those high achieving Black mamas out there, because I think motherhood also puts another layer on this midlife journey, on this menopause brain, on this whole process. It puts another layer on it. So if you are a high achieving Black mother, woman of color, 40 and over, who feels stuck or overwhelmed by either menopausal symptoms or the self-doubt or the pressure to be perfect, or a procrastination, I am creating just a new um, portion of my menopause coaching program to help you navigate through these changes, the changes that are happening in your brain, the changes that are happening throughout all the body systems. I'm creating it where you are able to navigate through all of those, including unloading things that no longer serve you, so that you can now build that business, that service-based business that you've been thinking about, that you've been putting off, that you've been waiting for whatever, some special occasion. I don't know. This the special time, right? We're always looking for that perfect time to start that business. And I'm here to tell you there's no perfect time. It's not going to come. So I wanted to create something that will allow you to actually start building now, giving you the confidence to building now, giving you the clarity to build it now. That is what I am creating in my Menopause Moguls group coaching program. So if that sounds like something that speaks to you, that resonates with you, sign up to be on my waiting list to hear more about the next cohort of Menopause Moguls. You can subscribe to my website, and I'll put that in my show notes. Or you can send me a DM on Instagram, and you can say the DM would be tell me more. Just put that, send me a DM message and say tell me more. And we can definitely put you on the list, as I am, like I said, in the kitchen cooking, cooking up some things to help you, not only help you, I really don't like that word help, more empowering you to really step out there and do that big audacious thing that you've been thinking about, like build a business or even grow your business. If you had a business and you kind of stopped because you just got overwhelmed with life or menopausal symptoms, this is for you too. So subscribe to my email list. That will be in the show notes, and or send me a DM on Instagram that says tell me more, and we'll get you on the list. All right, so that is what I have for you all today. I hope that that spoke to you, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Like I said, The Menopause Brain by Dr. Lisa Mosconi. She don't know that I'm promoting this book or telling y'all about this book. This is something that I've just decided to do because I think it's a good read. I'm close to finishing it. But it has a lot of great information and a lot of, explanation of what our brains are doing, the connection between our brains and our ovaries through this process. But like I said, I want to help / empower you, empower you to do what you want to do what you are being called to do in these midlife years, but you feel stuck and overwhelmed by the changes in your menopausal brain, and all the other changes that go along with these midlife years in my Menopause Moguls coaching program. So again, if you're interested in that, getting on the list for that, send me a DM on Instagram or subscribe to my email list, and so you can get more information as I roll it out. All right, y'all. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks for watching. Show me a like. Make a comment, please. If you're listening on the podcast apps, thanks for listening. And write a review. I would love to hear from you. Also, a 5-star rating will also be great, so more people can see this content and get this information. All right, y'all. As always, sending love and light. And I'll see y'all next time. Bye.